Welcome to episode 5 of The Accidental Writer. Today we have on the show Glenda Wise, who has jumped genres. She initially started out writing children's books with illustrations and has now written a travel writing book.
And I'm speaking with Ray Mooney. Ray Mooney's an interesting man who was jailed for rape, and as a consequence of that was written scores of plays about crime and punishment and related issues.
And Hamish will be speaking with Amanda Anastasi in relation to her poetry. Let's get on with the show. Thanks for joining us, Glenda. So you've written quite a few children's books and now you've jumped across to travel. Tell us a bit about the new book.
Well, I've got a lot of stories to tell, and I've always had to write everything down because I have a very bad memory, and do a lot of travel. So I've kept journals of all my travels over the years and remember a lot of experiences rather than dates and details and places. So juggling the journal information with just writing all my experiences down, I decided to make it a bit of a travel memoir of my more extreme travels.
And boy, is there some stories in there, from Bougainville to
Bougainville and Bali.
Yep, China, Nepal, the Himalayas. Yes, it's been wonderful.
It won't surprise you because you travel in a fairly rough way, natural.
But there is lots of wine, I'm gathering.
Oh, absolutely. You can't go anywhere without the wine. Wine and lipstick.
Excellent.
Yep.
Well, I like toilets and roofs. So I looked at it and I thought, well, tents and no toilets? Is that for Dick?
Yeah, no, it's some of them have been extreme. You know, I should have made a little doco, Toilets of the World, but then I thought, oh, nobody's going to be able to deal with this. I like to travel at grassroots level. So to stay in tents, trucks, yurts, riads, tribal homes, you get to live with the people, learn their cultures, and really understand people in remote places. And it's just so different to normal tourism.
So what's one of your favourite adventures that you had?
Well, I think perhaps the first one, I actually booked a trip to do a 700k ride through China. Then
700 Ks?
Through the back blocks of ancient Chinese villages in the Yunnan province. Then I bought a bike and then I learned how to ride, because I'd never learned as a child.
Okay, so that seems to be the wrong order to me, but
Yes.
anyway.
So I joined a group called the Warby Ghost Riders, cycling group, and every Thursday we'd go along the Warby Trail, which was flat.
From Warburton?
Yes, from Lilydale to Warburton and back, 66 k's. And it's a little bit, undulating, but a nice little training ride. So 8 months later, I went to China, and I'd learned on the flat, and this was mountainous. When I booked the trip, I asked whether it was very difficult, and he said, well, anyone with a medium sense of level of fitness would be fine. It's undulating. Whoa, it was 20 kilometres up, 20 kilometres down. One day I got to the top of a mountain and I had a 38 kilometre downhill switchbacks over cobblestones.
That's terrifying.
It was.
So
Quite a workout.
you're not only a writer, but you're an illustrator. And you've written a couple of books, 4 books, in fact, about these racy fairies.
4 children's books.
They haven't got racy fairies.
Yeah, no, they're children's books, Fairy Green. I was actually given the rights to revamp them a bit. I was actually asked to illustrate them in the first place. So I spent a couple of years doing that. It was a dream of a man called Mike who wanted to link the children of the earth by this phenomenon of greening the earth, you know, getting everyone interested in environment. So it's a little series of 4 children's stories, which all have a message and
written by someone else.
Written by Mike Kelly and then actually rewritten by me. They weren't. They needed a little bit of work. Sadly, Mike passed away and didn't get to see them come to fruition. And his widow, Ange, decided to, she said, look, they're all yours. I don't want to do anything with them. So she signed it all over to me and then I took them and redid them. So they're all there as well and they're available on the website. But also my Pearl Fairies books, I'd just done a whole series of 66 raunchy Pearl Fairies. I just kept painting them. And then one day I decided to put them all in a book with quotes and sayings. And so they're 2 books, book 1 and 2. And I think they're quite pretty, really.
They are gorgeous. They are simply gorgeous.
Where can people get a copy of your books?
Oh, I've got a little website that's built called glendawisebooks.com. So, yeah, all my art is on there and the 4 children's books and the 2 Pearl Fairies books. And you can, there's a Buy Now button. And when you click on the Buy Now button, it's somewhere on the website. You can read the first chapter, I think, on Bougainville.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming in and
it's a pleasure.
With us.
Thank you. It's lovely to speak to you.
Good on you, Glenda.
Thank you.
Well, Ray Mooney, how you going?
I'm going really well, thank you. Very well.
Okay, so you've written a lot in various different genres, but
Yes.
one of the things that seems to draw it all together is crime and punishment. You're a bit of an Australian Dostoevsky. Let's talk about, there's 2 people, you and Christopher Dale Flannery.
Yes.
So, when I just, sorry, it should be about you, but can I just,
No.
can I just talk about my thing? It's the 3 R's of punishment: revenge, retribution, and reform. And there's one other that's escaped me. It'll come to me.
Yes.
So, punishment is very complicated. It has to do a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
You've spent time in jail,
Yeah.
and you're very open about that.
Oh, not a problem. Yeah.
So let's start with you and then move on to Christopher Dale Flannery, and then how you are going to present these issues about retribution, revenge, reform and the like in future writing.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with your story.
Okay. What would you like to ask?
You spent 7 years in jail.
Okay, yeah, good. Okay, look, I spent 7.5 in Pentridge and then 9 months to a year in Long Bay. So all up probably a little bit over 8. An amazing place, really, because the Pentridge that I knew, and I went there in 1968, came out in 75.
Yeah.
It was probably, comparatively speaking, a good prison. Depending
I
upon-
get that. I
yeah,
get that.
Depending upon where you were in the prison, because there were sections of it which were a lot more favourable to be in than some of the other sections. And I went through them. I went through most of them. So I know most of the divisions, but I was lucky enough to have been in what was called A division. That's for the first timers. When I went there, I was a first timer. And that was for people who were prepared to adhere to rules and regulations. And as a result of that, you had access to a whole lot of rehabilitation programs.
So tell me more about your writing. Every Night's your, I suppose, most famous work, isn't it?
Probably. Look, I'm known as a prison writer, so that's I've sort of come from the prison system writing, because I wrote about 24 plays, of which 16 were full-length plays. The others were one-act plays that have mostly been done. Formed 2 prisoners.
Does it worry you
companies.
being called a prison writer?
No, not in the least. Not a
I mean,
problem.
it wouldn't worry me because everyone's got some singular aspect that they're most known for.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually think you'd probably like to be known as Australia's best decathlete, but but you know, and people say, "Oh, look, I was in a really successful show, and people know me for that show, and I'm just a one-act wonder."
Yes.
I think that's crap. I think that's total crap, because people have a specialty. They perform to a high level, and who cares whether they just do similar stuff, explore the similar themes, crime and punishment.
Yeah.
Who cares? Anyway, so you've written a lot of plays.
A lot of plays, not all to do with prison, not all to do with crime and punishment either, but I've written musicals, I've written comedies. But
In the musicals, did you write the musical?
I never wrote the music of. I wrote a play called Sideshow Alley, where I brought in really good people to do music. I've worked with Joe Dolce and Nunya Watari on...
Oh, Joe Dolce.
We did a play called Punyalamara, that was a musical. I've done quite a few musicals in my time. Because I went, like, this is a bit self-serving, but you wouldn't have known this, but it makes a little bit of sense. When I got out of prison in '75, I was in the first ever intake of the VCA drama students.
Is that right?
Yeah, I did the 3-year drama course. So that's what transferred me into theatre for a long time.
Well, it's important to have that formal, you know, you get all the contacts and the formal training and...
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember the VCA at that time. It was embryonic.
It was.
I was part of the dance...
Oh, the dance school. That came a little bit later than...
That came later?
That came later, yeah.
What happened was my dance school went broke and it was incorporated into
the VCA.
It was the Ballet Victoria, so
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
I used to hang around like a bad smell there and
Yeah.
wish I could be there, but I never actually made it.
Oh, well, you were sort of part of that genre anyway, that culture.
And they did that one about that play about the Northern Territory.
Well, Poor Fellow My Country.
Yeah, were you in that?
Yeah, that was...
Is that right?
I was the first ever intake was called Company 78, and Peter Royston had set it up.
Yeah, Peter Royston.
And we decided to do a big project that everyone was going to be involved in. So it was Xavier Herbert's book, Poor Fellow My Country. And we took it, and everyone, there's 30 of us in the company, and each of us took a chapter, and we designed the chapter into a theatre production. And the end result, I don't know if you saw it or not, but
I did see it.
Oh, well, then I didn't act in it, but I was the sort of editor, bringing it all together. I was there as a director, theatre director, not an actor. So, so Poor Fellow My Country was the first thing we did. That was in 1977, by the way, so that was the first thing they ever did.
Yeah, no, I remember that, and Mark Sheriffs was in it.
Well, Mark was in my year. Mark and I were in the same year together.
And he became a very successful children's writer.
Oh, and won the Academy Award for his wonderful short film.
Did he? I didn't know that.
Yes, the Amazing Adventures of Dr. Murrow, or what was it, The Incredible... when I say one, nominated for, I think.
Yeah.
I might have jumped the gun on that. Definitely nominated for an Academy Award, definitely, yeah.
Amazing, small world. Okay, so what are you going to be doing? Can I go to a really boring question? What are you going to do at the St Kilda Writers' Week?
Look, I'm working with Meredith Fuller. Now, I think Meredith has arranged a couple of things, and one of them will be to do with the latest writing I've done. I've written an e-book called Mouth of the Dog, an analysis of snitches, informers and verblers. And that's
very interesting,
because I actually bring one of his trials into it where he is verbaled.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Same here, mate. Same to you too. All the best too.
All the best.
So, Amanda, you have a few different hats as well as being a poet. Just to begin with, how did you become a poet yourself?
Oh, well, I studied professional writing at Deakin. I've always wanted to be a writer and I've always written poetry. But it wasn't until I found the spoken word scene in Melbourne in 2009, 2010. You know, I started reading on a few open mics, and I loved the idea of reading your work and having some kind of immediate reaction and feedback, because when you submit to a magazine or a journal, you don't know who's reading it.
Yep.
You sort of, yeah, it's a very distant...
And they might not get back to you for weeks or months.
Right, there's that. So that really helped me find my voice. You know, even more than my studies in writing and literature did. I mean, that's a great background, but actually doing it and being on the scene and being inspired by other poets that I hear read did great things for me, I think.
Great. Where do you focus your poetry? How would you describe it?
Oh, look, I write on many subjects. At the moment, I'm writing about climate change because of a residency I'm doing at the Monash Climate Change Communication Research Hub. But I was writing about, you know, ecological issues and extinction before that, so it was a good fit for me. And lately I've been working on a lot of monostitch poems to do with climate change, which are one-line poems.
The monostitch technique, how do you go about that?
Well, I was very inspired after I read Ian McBride's Slivers and a few other collections of monostitch poems. I love the idea of using the least amount of words possible. I think there's more power and directness in that approach.
The less is more approach.
Right,
Yes,
and especially with climate change messaging, where you want something that's going to penetrate and that non-poets would be interested in reading. I found that form was really good for climate change or communicating climate science through poetry.
Great. What does the residency entail with the Monash Centre for Climate Change Communication?
Well, it's a residency from 2019 to 2022, so it's a 3-year residency.
3-year project, right.
And look, I'm given the freedom to write on climate change in any capacity that I feel I can connect with. I have access to climate scientists, so if I have a question, you know, I can just email the climate scientists in the hub, which is great because I usually do a lot of research when writing poems, and to just have that person there is great. And they also allow me to attend climate science lectures. So I'll attend and I'll see what sort of brings up ideas, and to be honest, attending those lectures was at times a bit depressing because you realise the urgency of the issue and how bad it really is.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's been really helpful. And so every May and November each year that I'm doing the residency, I submit 600 to 800 words of poetry. And, you know, I have to produce it and,
with the residency.
and see what happens.
I mean, that sounds fascinating, and also the opportunity to go on a big learning curve about an issue, a very vital issue, you know, what is the future of our world, and the way humanity has been treating it is the number one issue of our times, most definitely.
Yeah.
You have another hat as well, and that is that you're the current convener of the La Mama Poetica events,
Yes.
which have been running over in Carlton since 1967. How did you become involved in that?
Right. Well, I haven't been running it since 1967. I'm not that old, but I've been running it since 2013. But yes, it has been running for that long. I got involved. Matt Hetherington was running it, and he moved up to Queensland, and so he asked me if I would take over, which I was really surprising and wonderful. So when I first started running it, I noticed that there were some poets that only went to La Mama Poetica, and also there was more of a theatre crowd that came in. So it was a very different audience. And so there was a bit of imposter syndrome at the beginning, but I sort of, you know, got into the role, and I love it now. It's just putting together 4 diverse, stylistically, you know, poets. And I really enjoy putting poets together and see, you know, what kind of night we can produce. I mean, you don't want to put the same 4 kinds of poets together. I mean, you would know this as a convener.
I've been to a few of the La Mama Poeticas, and the contrast in styles and delivery and the personalities of the poets, I have always really enjoyed.
Right.
You just about to start the new series of live
Yes.
events after a year of lockdown. Who have you got for that?
Oh, well, it's February 16th. We have Yu Yang Yu,
Yes.
who's an Australian Chinese poet. We have Maxine Banks, who does some really interesting time-travelling poetry about African American people and their history. We have Alice Allen, who has a new book called The Empty Show out at the moment. And Brian Walters, he's an eco-poet.
Brian, yes.
Yeah.
I know Brian. He's a very interesting character.
He's great. Well, actually,
Yeah.
he's a barrister, and he was actually a lawyer in the courthouse theatre when it was an actual courthouse. So he worked there
Right.
before it became a theatre,
So
which is an interesting
he doesn't
connection.
come wearing silk and and a wig, but anymore. Yeah.
No.
And now we're going to look at a brand new video that Amanda has sent to us in collaboration with a young musician named Josh Cake. It is a sequence of mono-stitch poems accompanied by music produced for the Monash Centre for Climate Change Communication.
were talking earlier about how Facebook is possibly the way that most people actually write these days. Like if they're not a professional writer, they're doing Facebook posts.
Correct. I think for a writing show we should return to Facebook writing and social media writing a bit. But yeah, I had a Facebook experience. So my son was rock climbing in the Cathedral Ranges, and he fell and dislocated his shoulder, basically stayed prone in a rock crevice for 8 hours.
Gosh.
And then was winched off by the police chopper. And in that time, the air ambulance chopper had come and gone a couple of times, so it was highly dramatic.
And that was because it was too hard to reach him, is that right? That there were different helicopters that came
That's
and
right.
went because it was too risky
Too
for the
risky.
helicopters to rescue
So it was
him?
quite a dramatic story.
Yeah.
And like I felt a bit guilty. Why am I writing about my son as a dramatic story? But like he was back, he picked up by the police chopper, taken to Essendon Airport, ambulance to the Royal Melbourne, and he was sort of back in at home with a sling. But the point is that for me, I compare it when I was growing up with newspapers. So with newspapers, it would have been, you know, a couple of days later, would have been black and white photos, if any.
Yeah.
And now I can put out on Facebook a professional publication immediately. And
not just a photo, but you can have video clips and...
That's right. So if our editor's got any competence at all, which is questionable.
But you're your own editor as well, right?
Oh, that's
So-
right. But for this show, there should be extracts from the film of him being winched out. So, yeah, it's a completely different world with social media. But the interesting thing from my point of view is, how do you make a social media exercise work well? And you have to go with the old rules, which is it's important to have a good photo.
Yeah.
But only one photo or two photos at most. You know, when people go on their holiday to Kathmandu and put in 23
101 photos.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Skip.
You know.
Yeah. You're right. One photo gives a great impact, doesn't it? Whereas having too many distracts you from
That's
the
right.
impact that you would
So you
otherwise
have to go back to, if you're writing, you have to go back to, and then the second thing is the lead. What is the lead? And the big things that get people reading is celebrity. Well, he's not a celebrity. He's just an annoying boy. Or conflict or drama. So he's a very nice boy. So he put up a post and he led with, "I'm so grateful to have been looked after by these rescuers." Whereas I'm not like that.
Right.
I'm not into gratitude. I'm in.
You're into the drama.
I'm into the drama. So I led with.
What a horrible situation.
Yeah,
this is
amazing.
terrible.
Yeah.
Like,
So new media, they give us new opportunities, but sometimes the same old rules apply. Get your drama right, get your celebrity in it if possible, and get your graphics right.
and maybe also look at which perspective you want to take it from. Do you want to take it from the negative, drama, whatever perspective, or do you want to look at it from the positive, grateful,
Right.
I'm thankful perspective?
No, it's all about me.
So it's drama.
Okay, well that's the show. Hope you enjoyed it. You might recall we spoke to Glenda about travel. We had Ray Mooney talking about crime and punishment. And finally, Amanda Anastasi about the incredibly important and unfortunately neglected issue of poetry and climate change. Thank you, Hamish. Power-packed and quite diverse show.
It has been. So we thank you for joining us, and we hope you are back with us again next time.